Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Territory of Cinema channel. Please consider subscribing and hitting that like button if you enjoy our content. Today, we are going to discuss the film Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone from 2001. The story begins by introducing us to the profoundly mundane existence of young Harry Potter, living under the oppressive roof of his aunt and uncle, the Dursleys. His life is a study in neglect, punctuated by the sheer oddity of things that happen around him. Lights flickering, things inexplicably mending themselves, foreshadowing the magical world that waits just beyond his grasp. This early drabness serves as a perfect contrast to the spectacle that is soon to unfold, much like the early, almost biographical struggles of a great artist before their breakthrough. The arrival of the letters, relentlessly delivered by an ever-increasing horde of owls, signals the irrevocable break from his dreary reality. Hagrid, a towering figure of genuine warmth and barely contained enthusiasm, a character embodying the unrestrained spirit of early cinematic fantasy, bursts onto the scene to deliver the news: Harry is a wizard. This revelation sets the stage for his journey, pulling him from the suffocating normalcy of Privet Drive towards Diagon Alley, a place bursting with the kind of vibrant sensory detail that filmmakers love to establish early on to immerse the audience. We see him acquire his first wand, an act imbued with the significance of a defining creative choice. His arrival at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is a moment of cinematic grandeur. The castle itself seems to breathe history and possibility. Here he meets Ron Weasley, whose easygoing loyalty contrasts nicely with Harry's reserved nature, and Hermione Granger, whose fierce intellect and dedication immediately position her as the grounding force of the trio. A dynamic reminiscent of many successful screenwriting partnerships where different talents balance each other out. The sorting ceremony, placing them into Gryffindor House, solidifies their bond. Their early education is a whirlwind of wonder, learning to fly on broomsticks, a clear nod to the thrill of kinetic action sequences beloved in adventure films, and grappling with the intricacies of magic. During this time, we are also introduced to the subtle, unsettling presence of Professor Snape, whose palpable disdain for Harry hints at deeper, unresolved conflicts, a classic dramatic device used to build tension. The central mystery begins to unfold around the Sorcerer's Stone, an object of immense power hidden within the school. Harry, driven by a protective instinct and perhaps a lingering sense of obligation to the legacy his parents left behind, partners with Ron and Hermione to investigate. Their collective efforts showcase their developing strengths: Ron's strategic thinking under pressure, Hermione's encyclopedic knowledge, the essential research phase in any good plot, and Harry's inherent bravery. Their descent into the labyrinth protecting the stone is a masterclass in escalating peril, testing each of their individual skills. They navigate a series of elaborate traps, each demanding a unique solution, from overcoming a monstrous three-headed dog to surviving a deadly game of wizard chess, a sequence that beautifully visualizes tactical decision-making in a highly kinetic form. The climax sees Harry facing the final guardian alone. This confrontation reveals the true antagonist, Professor Quirrell, who has been operating under the sinister influence of Lord Voldemort. The scene where Voldemort manifests upon the back of Quirrell's head is a stark, almost shocking visual representation of duality and hidden evil, a high point of tension. Harry's victory, achieved not through superior skill, but through the enduring power of selfless love inherited from his mother, a theme often explored in films about inherited burdens, is both deeply personal and universally resonant. The ending sees Harry recovering in the infirmary. The truth about his parents' sacrifice and the protective charm cast upon him is revealed, finally granting him a sense of belonging and peace. As the school year concludes and the students depart, Harry leaves Hogwarts not as the neglected orphan, but as someone who has found his place, possessing friendships and a future brimming with the adventures that await him beyond the summer break. The initial scenes of Harry's existence at Number 4, Privet Drive, are painted in the dullest palette imaginable, emphasizing the suffocating mediocrity imposed by the Dursleys, who represent the very antithesis of the imaginative spirit required for true artistry. Harry, growing up amidst cupboard spaces and constant belittling, carries the weight of an unspoken significance, a silent promise of the extraordinary that his drab surroundings cannot extinguish. This quiet suffering resonates with the early, often thankless years many iconic figures endure before their talents are recognized. When Hagrid arrives, he is less a man and more a force of nature, embodying the sheer, unbridled joy of discovery. His entrance shatters the fragile normalcy the Dursleys have constructed, much like a revolutionary piece of art jolting a complacent society. The journey to Diagon Alley is Harry's first true immersion, a visual feast designed to overload the senses, showing the audience, and Harry simultaneously, the intoxicating potential of this hidden world. Purchasing his wand is depicted with near-religious significance. It's the moment the tool of the trade is selected, mirroring a composer choosing their first piano or a painter finding their signature brush. Hogwarts itself feels ancient and wise, a character in its own right, constructed to inspire awe. The formation of the central trio is immediate and essential. Ron, with his boundless, slightly clumsy affection, provides the necessary emotional anchor, the sidekick whose unwavering belief is often just as crucial as the protagonist's bravery. Hermione, by contrast, is the walking encyclopedia, the diligent student whose academic prowess stems from a deep-seated need for order and mastery, a trait seen in many highly disciplined performers who thrive on rigorous practice. Their quick camaraderie against the backdrop of the grand echoing halls forms the emotional core that will sustain them through subsequent dangers. The early lessons, particularly flying, introduce an element of reckless abandon and physical grace, celebrating the sheer fun of unconstrained motion, a necessary counterpoint to the more cerebral aspects of magic. Meanwhile, the simmering resentment radiating from Professor Snape adds a layer of immediate personal threat. Snape, whose stern, almost theatrical disdain is perfectly pitched, acts as the immediate gatekeeper and external manifestation of the scrutiny and judgment Harry is forced to endure, hinting at a much larger, systemic resistance Harry must overcome. The quest for the Sorcerer's Stone transforms their academic year into a genuine adventure. The decision to investigate is not purely heroic. It's driven by a potent mix of curiosity and a fierce loyalty to Dumbledore, the wise, often enigmatic mentor figure whose absence during the crucial moments forces the young heroes to step up. Their passage through the hidden chambers is brilliantly choreographed, allowing each member to shine in their specialized area. Hermione's prowess solves the logical riddles, demonstrating that intellectual rigor is as vital as brute force. Ron's sacrifice during the giant chessboard sequence is perhaps his finest moment, a display of strategic selflessness that proves his worth beyond mere comedic relief. The final confrontation is raw and intensely personal. Seeing Quirrell, the mild-mannered teacher, twisted into a vessel for Voldemort's terrifying return is a masterful stroke of horror that defines the film's darker undertones. Voldemort's presence, though spectral, carries immense menace, representing the entrenched ancient evil that threatens to extinguish the light of the new generation. Harry's final act is pure instinct, the power of his mother's protective love manifesting physically. It's not a spell he casts, but a deep inherent force, suggesting that true power comes from connection, a recurring motif in stories about enduring legacies. The subsequent recovery offers a necessary moment of emotional catharsis. The revelations about Lily Potter's ultimate sacrifice solidify Harry's identity, transforming him from a survivor into an inheritor of a legacy built on profound love. His departure at the end of the term is quiet but significant. The boy who arrived despised and invisible leaves imbued with purpose, recognized by his peers and, most importantly, by himself, ready to embrace the complex, sprawling narrative of his life, awaiting him beyond the closing credits. The initial tableau of Harry's life with the Dursleys is a deliberate exercise in establishing baseline misery, a necessary foundation for the explosion of wonder to follow. His confinement in the cupboard under the stairs is a physical manifestation of his stunted identity, a constant reminder that he does not belong in this world of forced normalcy. The tiny, almost miraculous occurrences around him, the way his broken glasses inexplicably mend themselves after a particularly harsh word from Vernon Dursley, are mere flickers of his suppressed potential, akin to the unseen practice hours a dedicated musician puts in before ever performing publicly. The sheer volume of owl mail acts as a collective, undeniable summons from the wider world. Hagrid's arrival, a veritable embodiment of untamed, hearty enthusiasm, is the necessary catalyst. He operates on instinct and deep, almost childlike loyalty, bringing with him the aroma of the wild and the weight of ancient secrets. His delivery of the news that Harry is a wizard is less an explanation and more a declaration of destiny. The subsequent trip to Diagon Alley is a baptism by spectacle. Every shopfront, every strangely dressed shopper, pulses with an energy that contrasts violently with the colorless world Harry has known. His selection of the wand is handled with reverence. The description of the Phoenix Feather Core connecting him to the fate of Voldemort is a beautiful piece of narrative foreshadowing, establishing an immediate, mythic connection between hero and antagonist. At Hogwarts, the castle looms as a promise of belonging. The sheer scale of the place inspires both terror and profound excitement. The forging of the trio is rapid and essential. Ron, with his easy generosity and grounding sense of humor, instantly accepts Harry without reservation, offering the simple comfort of camaraderie Harry has never known. Hermione, initially perceived as an irritating know-it-all, quickly proves herself indispensable. Her rigorous adherence to rules and her encyclopedic memory are the perfect complements to Harry's impulsiveness and Ron's emotional intuition. This dynamic is the engine of their future success, balancing intuition with intellect. The Sorting Hat's pronouncement of Gryffindor seals their fate, aligning them with the virtue of courage. The early days are a rush of intoxicating new skills, most notably Quidditch, which showcases Harry's innate, almost preternatural talent for aerial navigation. This skill isn't learned through hours of rote practice, but seems inherent, a gift inherited from his magically gifted parents. Simultaneously, the shadow of Snape deepens. His interactions with Harry are laced with a cold, almost personal animosity that transcends mere teaching discipline. Snape's resentment feels rooted in history, a deep-seated bitterness that informs his every cold glance, painting him as the immediate, recognizable antagonist in Harry's school life. The focus on the stone forces the students to operate outside the safety net of adulthood. Their investigation is fueled by an almost reckless desire to protect something they instinctively know is important. Their perilous journey through the chambers is a test designed not for seasoned wizards, but for burgeoning heroes. Hermione's ability to decipher the logic puzzles demonstrates that learning and intellect are active weapons, while Ron's decisive, painful choice to sacrifice himself on the chessboard illustrates the highest form of loyalty, putting the mission and his friend above his own immediate safety. The final confrontation is stripped bare of the previous protective layers. Quirrell's reveal is a moment of sheer narrative shock, transforming the bumbling teacher into a vessel for pure ancient evil. Voldemort, reduced to a disembodied parasitic presence, embodies the ultimate temptation: power without a body, corruption without conscience. Harry's defense is entirely instinctive, driven by the residual magic of his mother's ultimate sacrifice. This love is depicted as a tangible force, burning Quirrell upon contact, a powerful metaphor suggesting that selfless connection is the only true antidote to existential fear and selfish ambition. The denouement in the hospital wing is quiet and restorative. Dumbledore's presence offers calm authority, explaining the complex tapestry of history Harry has unknowingly been woven into. Understanding the magnitude of his mother's choice finally grants Harry internal peace. He is not merely surviving, he is protected by a profound legacy. As the year closes, the transition from the dusty cupboard to the vibrant halls of Hogwarts is complete. Harry leaves with deep, tested friendships and the quiet confidence of someone who has faced darkness and won, no longer defined by what he lost, but by what he has discovered within himself and in the loyal circle surrounding him. The return to the Dursleys for the summer break is portrayed with a sudden, jarring shift in tone, a narrative descent back into grayscale after the vibrant palette of the magical world. This enforced hiatus serves a crucial dramatic purpose. It isolates Harry, stripping away his newfound support system to emphasize the strength and authenticity of the bonds he forged at Hogwarts. The Dursleys, predictably, remain hostile and willfully ignorant, their oppressive normalcy acting as a painful foil to the extraordinary truths Harry now holds. He is, for a time, a prisoner in his own home, forced to reconcile the dizzying heights of his adventure with the suffocating banality of his former life. However, this separation is not without its own nascent developments. Harry's newfound identity begins to manifest in small, restless ways, suggesting that the magic within him is not something that can be simply locked away. His internal landscape is now populated by memories of flight, the taste of butterbeer, and the faces of his friends, creating a profound sense of longing. This period of waiting is the necessary incubation before the next stage of his journey can begin, reflecting how many great creators must retreat and process their inspirations before producing their next significant work. The quiet anticipation is punctuated by small signs, perhaps an accidental levitation of a spoon when he's particularly frustrated, that confirm his identity is permanent. The emotional core of this interlude revolves around the connection he manages to maintain, however tenuously, with the wizarding world. While direct contact is limited, the sheer fact that he knows where he belongs creates an invisible shield against the Dursleys' worst attempts at erasure. He is no longer simply enduring, he is waiting, anticipating the inevitable call back to his true home. This understanding shapes his relationship with the Dursleys. Where before there was fear and subservience, there is now a quiet, knowing detachment. The look of a traveler who understands that his current surroundings are merely a temporary layover. This period of waiting is vital preparation, allowing the emotional residue of the stone's discovery to settle and solidify, ensuring that when he returns to Hogwarts, he does so not just as a survivor, but as a dedicated participant in the ongoing conflict against the darkness that seeks to reclaim him. The jarring shift back to Privet Drive is almost physical in its impact, the muted colors and stifled atmosphere of the Dursley home feeling suddenly toxic after the vibrancy of Hogwarts. This forced summer exile functions as a deliberate narrative tension builder, ensuring the audience feels the weight of Harry's separation from his true environment. The Dursleys react to Harry's return with their characteristic blend of fear and aggressive normalcy, attempting to smother any lingering spark of magic with excessive chores and psychological small-mindedness. Dudley, representing the petty, unexamined prejudices of the mundane world, continues his reign of minor tyranny, though perhaps with a fraction less conviction, now that Harry has proven himself capable of far greater things. For Harry, the summer is a study in contained restlessness. He carries the weight of his shared secret, a treasure chest of memories he cannot open for anyone around him. The silence where there should be magical chatter, the absence of Ron's easy banter or Hermione's clarifying questions, fosters a deep, almost physical ache for belonging. He is an actor forced off the grand stage and back into an empty rehearsal room, practicing his lines silently. This quiet struggle is essential, for it tests the resilience of the magic he has found. True transformation isn't just about the grand adventure, but about maintaining that inner light when external validation is withdrawn. Yet, the magic refuses to be entirely suppressed. These small, uncontrolled manifestations, a sudden, inexplicable puff of smoke when Dudley insults his parents, or the way the air seems to shimmer around him when he is deep in thought about the past, are evidence that the connection forged at Hogwarts is covalent, not temporary. These incidents are subtle narrative breadcrumbs, suggesting that Harry is evolving beyond the simple protection afforded by his mother's sacrifice. He is beginning to exert his own influence on the world, albeit involuntarily. The most significant emotional landscape of this period is the longing for his friends. The memory of their shared ordeal around the stone transforms from a recent event into the bedrock of his identity. He clings to the unspoken understanding that they are linked, an unbreakable unit separated only by geography and the Dursleys' oppressive vigilance. This waiting is characterized by a hardening resolve. The naive orphan who arrived at Hogwarts is slowly being replaced by a young man who understands the stakes involved in his existence. He is no longer just surviving the Dursleys. He is enduring them in service of a larger, more meaningful future, awaiting his return to the structured chaos and profound acceptance of the wizarding world. The summer at Privet Drive becomes a psychological pressure cooker, designed to isolate Harry and force a confrontation with his own self-worth outside the validation of his new world. Vernon Dursley, ever the embodiment of rigid, fearful conformity, seems to redouble his efforts to erase any trace of the extraordinary from his nephew, treating Harry's presence like a lingering, unpleasant odor. Dudley, meanwhile, is observed to be slightly less aggressive, perhaps sensing the shift in the invisible power dynamic. His bullying becomes more petulant, lacking the absolute conviction it once held when Harry was perceived as utterly powerless. For Harry, this enforced stillness is perhaps the most challenging part of his education thus far. He exists in a state of internal vibrancy, contrasted sharply with external stagnation. His memories of Hogwarts are not just recollections, but active fortifications against the dreary reality. He replays the thrill of Quidditch in his mind, the sound of the cheers, the dizzying speed, finding solace in the kinetic energy he cannot physically access. This period mirrors the necessary downtime for a performer between tours, where the creative energy must be internally recharged and refined away from the public eye. The few magical flare-ups that occur are deeply rooted in his emotional state, acting as unintentional declarations of self. When Petunia Dursley, in a rare moment of inadvertent vulnerability, attempts to probe his silence with veiled hostility, Harry's suppressed anger can cause objects near him, a kitchen knife, a teacup, to vibrate almost imperceptibly. These are not dramatic displays, but subtle affirmations that his power source, the deep well of magic activated by his trials, is now integrated into his very being. He is learning unconsciously to manage the volatile proximity of his true self to the mundane world. Crucially, this isolation fosters a deeper appreciation for the meaning of friendship. He spends hours imagining conversations with Ron, what outrageous scheme they might be hatching, and mentally reviewing Hermione's logical explanations for complex spells. These imagined dialogues are his lifeline, solidifying the realization that his power is amplified, not diminished, by these connections. He understands, perhaps more clearly than Dumbledore intended at this early stage, that Voldemort's pursuit is not just about an object, but about eradicating the forces of connection and love that Harry now embodies. The summer is thus transformed from mere waiting into a silent, internal apprenticeship, preparing him for the inevitable return to the grander stage. The quiet endurance of the summer eventually yields to the promise of reunion, signaled not by an official letter, but by the arrival of Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. Their appearance, often in bold and dramatic fashion, a clear departure from the subtle approach favored by the Ministry, serves as a powerful narrative device, underscoring the inherent warmth and impulsive nature of true friendship, which often disregards bureaucratic niceties. Seeing his friends again is a profound emotional event for Harry, a restoration of balance after the oppressive quietude. The initial reunion is electric, filled with the shared relief of knowing the danger is temporarily past and the excitement of recounting details they were unable to share over any non-magical means of communication. This summer interlude, though brief, is marked by their efforts to keep Harry connected and sane. They bring news, gossip, and context from the wider wizarding community, filling in the gaps left by the Dursleys' deliberate silence regarding the outside world. Their conversations quickly shift back into the familiar rhythm of shared intellectual curiosity and plotting, demonstrating how quickly they fall back into their established roles: Harry, the brave initiator, Ron, the loyal heart, and Hermione, the meticulous planner. Their bond is visibly strengthened, having been tested by proximity to true evil. However, this period also subtly introduces the growing awareness of the outside world's perception of Harry. He is no longer just an anonymous orphan. He is the boy who lived, a celebrity in a world he barely understands. This burgeoning fame is handled with a mixture of awkwardness and mild resentment by Harry, who chafes at the notion of being defined by a single past event, wishing instead to be judged by his current actions. This early recognition of celebrity mirrors the complex relationship many prodigious talents have with their breakthrough work. The initial acclaim can sometimes obscure the ongoing, complex development of their true artistry. Their time together is brief but potent, a necessary fuel injection for Harry's spirit. It reaffirms that his identity is not tied to the Dursleys' house, but to the circle of people who see him for who he is. The inevitable departure signals not a return to isolation, but a temporary parting of comrades before the next act of their shared adventure. They leave Harry with the firm understanding that the summer is over and the path back to Hogwarts is their shared destination, a place where they are finally seen and accepted in their entirety. The dramatic re-entry of Ron and Hermione into Harry's summer isolation is a brilliant piece of staging, instantly dissolving the stifling atmosphere that the Dursleys had so carefully cultivated. Their arrival is not just a visit, it is a rescue mission, a physical manifestation of the invisible thread connecting the trio. Ron, true to form, is likely bursting with unfiltered enthusiasm, perhaps overshooting the mark slightly with the means of their arrival, while Hermione, ever the pragmatist, would have contingency plans laid out, ensuring the Dursleys couldn't immediately raise an alarm or disrupt their clandestine meeting. This reunion instantly reestablishes the vital chemistry of the group, proving that their success in the first year was rooted in synergy, not just singular bravery. Their exchanges are charged with the unspoken understanding of shared trauma and triumph. They exchange fragments of their respective summers, Harry describing the dull monotony punctuated by magical outbursts, and the others likely relaying snippets of news about the wizarding world, perhaps tales of how the defeat of Quirrell and Voldemort's temporary retreat was perceived by the wider community. This sharing of information is critical. It helps anchor Harry, showing him he is part of a larger narrative structure, not just a solitary figure fighting shadows in Surrey. The weight of Harry's celebrity, the boy who lived moniker, is gently but firmly reintroduced during these shared moments. While Ron is perhaps a little awed by the fame, often repeating stories Harry has already forgotten, Hermione views it with a more critical eye, concerned that the focus on past glory might distract from necessary preparation for the future. Harry himself visibly bristles at the label, understanding instinctively that fame is a heavy cloak that obscures true identity. He doesn't want to be a historical footnote, he wants to be a functioning wizard, a sentiment deeply familiar to any artist who finds their early success overshadowing their current efforts to mature and grow. Their presence serves as a final, necessary push, jarring Harry out of his passive summer endurance and refocusing his energy towards the school year ahead. It confirms that the dangers faced were real, and the bonds forged are durable enough to survive separation. The very act of their visit, brazenly crossing the boundary between the Muggle and magical worlds, is a small act of defiance against the restrictive nature of the Dursleys' world. When they depart, the silence left behind is different from the silence before. It is no longer the silence of abandonment, but the quiet pause between acts, charged with anticipation for the curtain to rise again on the familiar, demanding, and ultimately welcoming world of Hogwarts. The journey back to Hogwarts is, in itself, a crucial rite of passage, a deliberate separation from the restrictive gravity of the Dursleys' world. The transition point, usually the crowded, chaotic, yet fundamentally organized platform 9 3/4, serves as a powerful visual representation of transition, a threshold where identity shifts seamlessly. Harry feels the familiar surge of adrenaline mixed with profound relief as he steps onto the scarlet steam engine, the Hogwarts Express, leaving the drab reality behind him for the vibrant, shared space of the compartment. Inside the compartment, the atmosphere is thick with the giddy energy of returnees. It is here that the dynamic between the trio is fully re-established. Ron often defaults to recounting humorous anecdotes, or perhaps worrying about his exam results, grounding the conversation in relatable schoolboy concerns. Hermione inevitably will be clutching a stack of recommended reading, already making mental checklists of spells she needs to master or historical details she needs to revisit. Her preparation is tireless, born from a deep-seated fear of inadequacy that drives her relentless pursuit of perfection. Harry, however, carries a quiet weight, observing the ease with which his friends slip back into the routine. For him, the journey itself is a form of meditation, allowing him to process the memory of Voldemort's near success. He sits taller, his gaze more assured than it was the previous year, a subtle but significant transformation from the hesitant boy who first arrived. He is no longer just reacting to fate, he is consciously stepping back into his role. The train ride also offers glimpses into the wider Wizarding Society's view of him. Other students stare, some with hero worship, others with thinly veiled suspicion. This persistent scrutiny reinforces the theme that, for Harry, privacy is a luxury he may never fully possess. He learns, perhaps through overhearing conversations, that the defeat of Quirrell has only served to amplify the fear surrounding Voldemort's potential return, making his own position inherently more precarious. As the train nears Hogsmeade Station, the first sight of the castle piercing the twilight, its ancient towers illuminated against the darkening sky, evokes a visceral feeling of homecoming. It is a moment of pure emotional resonance, symbolizing safety and belonging. This journey back is not merely a physical relocation, it is a necessary recalibration, confirming that the bonds forged in secret danger are the true architecture of his life, ready now to face the challenges of the second year, armed with experience and renewed camaraderie. The arrival at Hogsmeade Station is always a moment saturated with atmosphere, the air suddenly crisp and carrying the faint, earthy scent of the Scottish Highlands, a stark contrast to the stale air of Privet Drive. The students spill out, their chatter immediately escalating as they shed the formality of the Muggle world they left behind. For Harry, the transition from the confined space of the train compartment to the open expanse leading to the carriages is the symbolic shedding of his summer skin. The ride in the horse-drawn carriages, The thestralless journey, as he is not yet ready to see the spectral horses, is filled with a buoyant excitement that only the return to Hogwarts can generate. Ron is likely complaining good-naturedly about the summer heat or the sheer volume of homework he avoided, while Hermione is already discussing potential curriculum changes or perhaps the latest pronouncements from the Ministry, which she views with cautious skepticism. Harry often stays quiet during these initial moments, absorbing the collective energy, letting the sight of the dark, tree-lined path leading up to the castle wash over him. The moment the massive oak doors of the entrance hall swing open, revealing the candlelit splendor and the soaring ceiling, is invariably breathtaking, even for a returning student. It is a visual affirmation of continuity. The returning house elves bustle about, the familiar scent of old stone and distant cooking fires fills the air, and the echoes of hundreds of past conversations seem to settle around them like an old blanket. The Great Hall, packed with students from all 4 houses, is the heart of this homecoming. Seeing Professor Dumbledore, whose calm, benevolent presence suggests an almost infinite well of wisdom, a true master of his craft, is incredibly reassuring. His welcome speech, often couched in light-hearted warnings, serves to gently remind the students that while the castle is safe, the world outside its walls is not. Harry notices the subtle changes in the older students, the added confidence in the prefects, a sign of the continuous upward trajectory of their education. The sorting ceremony for the first years, a ritual Harry now observes with the seasoned eye of an experienced participant, is particularly poignant. He watches the nervous faces, recognizing a younger version of himself in the hesitant steps toward the stool. The brief, almost palpable tension as the Hat deliberates over a new student's fate reminds him of his own moment of uncertainty, making his own place in Gryffindor feel less like an accident and more like a confirmed destiny. This shared experience, witnessed yearly, reinforces the communal identity of the school, the very structure that allowed him to survive the mystery of the stone. It is in this familiar, ordered chaos that Harry truly begins to feel like he is home, ready for whatever complex narrative the new term will bring. The initial stirrings of the new school year quickly bring with them the subtle, often unsettling hum of change and foreshadowing, a narrative technique filmmakers use expertly to signal a shift in tone from mere adventure to looming threat. While the routines of classes resume, the sometimes dull but necessary foundation building that even great talents must adhere to, the underlying tension is palpable. There are whispers, hushed conversations in the corridors that die down abruptly when Harry, Ron, or Hermione pass by. The lingering shadow of Voldemort's near return has clearly not dissipated. Instead, it seems to have driven the darker elements of the wizarding world further underground, making them more insidious and harder to pin down. The introduction of new elements within the curriculum or the faculty often serves to deepen the world building and increase the immediate stakes for the protagonists. Any new professor arriving to fill a void, or any mandated new rule implemented by the Ministry, is immediately scrutinized by the trio. Hermione, with her characteristic reliance on research and established authority, will try to find precedent for the changes in library texts, while Ron might offer a more intuitive, perhaps skeptical reading of the situation based on school gossip. Harry, meanwhile, often responds through action and instinct, observing the reactions of established figures like Snape or McGonagall for clues. Snape's demeanor, in particular, seems to harden. If he was displeased before, he is now demonstrably colder, perhaps seeing Harry's survival as a personal affront or a continued disruption to the expected order. His scrutiny of Harry, whether in potions or during casual hallway encounters, carries a heavier weight, suggesting that the past year's events have merely sharpened his focus on the boy he seems determined to see fail. This sustained antagonism ensures that even in moments of academic normalcy, the audience remains aware that a personal conflict, simmering just beneath the surface of legality and decorum, is ongoing. The classroom becomes less a place of learning and more a battlefield of wills, a familiar trope in stories about young heroes coming into their power against entrenched opposition. The reintroduction to routine is deceptive. The comfortable rhythm of classes acts as a thin veneer over a rapidly thickening layer of anxiety within the castle. Professor Flitwick's charms class might offer momentary levity with a tricky spell, allowing the trio a brief, synchronized success that reaffirms their teamwork. But even this light moment feels temporary, like a brightly lit stage before the house lights dim for a darker act. The sheer volume of required reading Hermione devours is not just academic diligence, it's a desperate attempt to arm herself with knowledge against the unknown, a coping mechanism for the fear that logic can always be overcome by malice. She pores over texts with a frantic energy, her brow furrowed with the weight of responsibility she feels for the group's collective safety. Potions class, naturally, becomes the crucible for the burgeoning tensions. Snape, now seemingly immune to the novelty of Harry's presence, operates with a chilling efficiency. His instructions are precise, his criticisms surgical, aimed not just at correcting technique, but at chipping away at Harry's nascent confidence. When Harry struggles, perhaps with a particularly tricky infusion, the look Snape gives him is not merely disappointment, it's a deep, inherited contempt, suggesting that every moment Harry succeeds is a painful reminder of a history Snape refuses to let go of. This environment forces Harry to rely heavily on Ron's surprising, though often luck-based, intuitive prowess in the subject, proving that sometimes an emotional understanding of the ingredients beats rote memorization, a direct challenge to Hermione's methodical approach. Beyond the classroom, the atmosphere shifts subtly toward the claustrophobic. The common room, once a haven of boisterous camaraderie, now sees more hushed conversations. The older students, particularly the Slytherins, carry an air of smug certainty, as if they possess privileged information about the looming threat that Harry and his friends lack. This communal anxiety breeds a distinct sense of internal division within the school, a microcosm of the wider world bracing for inevitable conflict. The excitement of return has curdled slightly into the alertness of soldiers awaiting the next skirmish. Harry finds himself perpetually scanning the periphery, his eyes drawn to shadowed alcoves and silent corners, developing a hunter's vigilance that contrasts sharply with the relaxed camaraderie he shares with Ron and Hermione when they are truly alone. This second year begins not with joyful exploration, but with the grim necessity of defense. The most disruptive and emotionally charged element of this new environment is the sudden appearance of a new authority figure tasked with the explicit protection of the castle, a figure who, ironically, becomes the source of immense fear and suspicion for the trio. This new arrival, often radiating an air of stiff, almost brittle competence, is meant to be reassuring, yet their very presence feels like an overreaction, a physical manifestation of the Ministry's anxiety over the previous year's events. Their methods are rigid, perhaps overly focused on security protocols that feel intrusive and condescending to students who have already faced down ancient evil. This new guardian often demonstrates an uncomfortable obsession with Harry, viewing him less as a student and more as a liability or a high-value target requiring intense surveillance. Their interactions with Harry are characterized by a patronizing tone, a sense of speaking down to someone who is simultaneously too young to understand the gravity of the situation and yet dangerously central to it. This scrutiny makes Harry feel caged, not protected. He observes that this figure seems unable to distinguish between genuine danger and harmless teenage exuberance, treating every accidental magical discharge or whispered conversation as potential treason. Ron, relying on his ingrained skepticism of authority figures, especially those positioned above his station, is the first to vocalize his distrust. His loyalty often manifests as protective anger. He sees this imposed guardianship as an insult to the collective efforts the trio made the previous year. Hermione, initially inclined to trust established systems, finds herself conflicted. She respects the need for order, but recognizes the flawed application of that order, beginning to use her research skills not just to learn spells, but to uncover the true motivations and background of this new guardian. For Harry, this heightened security only deepens his sense of isolation. He feels constantly observed, his burgeoning abilities stifled by the fear of immediate reprimand. The castle, which last year symbolized freedom and acceptance, now feels infiltrated, its ancient welcoming walls ironically fortified against its most famous resident. This subtle shift in the school's emotional climate, from magical playground to heavily policed institution, lays the groundwork for the trio to feel they must operate entirely outside official channels once again, driven by the realization that the greatest threats often wear the most convincing uniforms. The genesis of the cinematic phenomenon that became Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone internationally, in 2001 represents a fascinating intersection of literary fidelity, emergent blockbuster technology, and the calculated appeal of wholesome fantasy to a global audience. Chris Columbus, the director, brought a specific sensibility to the project, one forged in the family-friendly, adventure-driven filmmaking of the 1980s and 1990s. His previous directorial efforts, notably Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, established him as a craftsman adept at balancing childlike wonder with moments of genuine emotional stakes and visual spectacle, qualities perfectly suited to translating J.K. Rowling's foundational text. The casting of the primary trio was perhaps the most scrutinized decision of the entire production. Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson were relative unknowns, a deliberate choice that lent an immediate, undeniable authenticity to the roles. Radcliffe, embodying the orphaned protagonist, carried the weight of expectation with a nascent vulnerability, his journey mirroring the audience's own introduction to the wizarding world. Watson, as Hermione Granger, immediately established the sharp intellect and fierce loyalty that would define the character, while Grint's Ron Weasley provided the necessary grounding in humor and relatable familial struggle. This commitment to youthful, relatively unblemished faces allowed the narrative focus to remain squarely on the magic and the story itself, rather than pre-existing star power distracting from the source material's established characterizations. Visually, the film established the rich, textured aesthetic that would define the franchise. The production design team achieved a remarkable feat in translating the often vivid, sometimes gothic descriptions of the books into tangible locations. Hogwarts' School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is not merely a backdrop, it is a character in itself. The Great Hall, with its floating candles and impossibly high, enchanted ceiling, immediately sold the impossible grandeur of this hidden society. This visual language was supported by a score from John Williams, whose contributions here are seminal. Williams, already a titan in the industry known for scoring foundational cinematic mythologies like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, provided themes, most notably Hedwig's theme, that are instantly evocative of wonder, mystery, and nascent heroism. This music acts as the emotional anchor, guiding the viewer through the awe of Diagon Alley or the tension of the Forbidden Forest. The narrative structure adheres closely to the classic hero's journey, effectively introducing the audience to the mundane reality of the Dursleys, the sudden disruption of the Owl Post, and the exhilarating revelation of the magical undercurrents of the world. The pacing in the first act is carefully controlled, building anticipation for the moment Harry steps onto Platform 9-3-4. Columbus masterfully balances the exposition, the history of Voldemort, the nature of the Sorcerer's Stone, with moments of pure, childlike joy, such as the first flying lesson on broomsticks. The film's central conflict, concerning the protection of the stone, allows for the introduction of the core adult figures, each played by actors whose gravitas lent immediate weight to their roles. Richard Harris, as Albus Dumbledore, provided the necessary twinkle of benign power and ancient wisdom, a stark contrast to the creeping menace embodied by Ian Hart's understated, tragic Professor Quirrell. The reveal of Quirrell's connection to Voldemort serves as the film's first true moment of cinematic darkness, a necessary step in preparing the audience for the escalating stakes of subsequent installments. While some later entries in the franchise would lean into darker, more complex psychological themes, Sorcerer's Stone maintains a tone of pure, unadulterated discovery. It functions as an extended invitation into a secret world, emphasizing themes of friendship, bravery tested by inexperience, and the inherent goodness found in chosen family, represented by the bond forged between Harry, Ron, and Hermione. The film's success lies in its meticulous, reverent translation of text to screen, establishing a durable visual and oral blueprint that subsequent directors would build upon, all while successfully launching 3 careers that would grow in tandem with the global fascination for the wizarding world. The establishment of the core relationship dynamics is crucial to the film's enduring appeal. Hermione Granger, initially portrayed as somewhat abrasive due to her relentless adherence to rules and her vast knowledge, undergoes a subtle but significant transformation catalyzed by the troll incident in the girls' bathroom. This shared peril acts as the crucible for the Golden Trio, forging an unbreakable bond rooted in mutual respect rather than immediate affinity. Watson's performance captures that difficult transition from academic superiority to genuine comradeship. Her quick thinking and encyclopedic recall become indispensable assets, moving her beyond the archetype of the merely intelligent sidekick. Ron Weasley, often serving as the emotional proxy for the average viewer thrust into extraordinary circumstances, grounds the proceedings. Grint excels at conveying the mix of awe, jealousy, and fierce protectiveness Ron feels. His background, rooted in a large, loving, yet financially modest wizarding family, offers a poignant counterpoint to Harry's isolated, privileged upbringing, albeit under the Dursleys' oppressive shadow. Ron's struggle with inferiority, particularly in the shadow of his famous best friend and his accomplished older brothers, is a relatable human element inserted into the high fantasy setting, making his eventual triumphs, such as mastering chess, feel earned and deeply satisfying. Harry himself, played by Radcliffe, is characterized by an inherent decency often masked by confusion and burgeoning self-doubt. The film allows his innate magical aptitude to surface naturally, never feeling like an unearned advantage. His primary motivation remains the search for belonging, a universal longing perfectly externalized by his acceptance into the Gryffindor common room, a space that instantly radiates warmth and security, a stark, deliberate contrast to the cold alienation of Privet Drive. Technologically, the film navigated the nascent possibilities of computer-generated imagery, CGI, with impressive restraint. While the visual effects bring magic to life, the flapping pages of the textbook, the movement of the staircases, the emphasis remains on practical effects and large-scale physical sets. The Quidditch sequence, though exhilarating, is grounded by the visible effort and danger inherent in flying, preventing the spectacle from feeling weightless. This commitment to tangible environments ensures that even the most fantastical elements retain a necessary sense of physical reality, aiding the viewer's immersion. The film's pacing, while largely effective in its careful unfolding of the world, does slow slightly during the middle act as the mystery of the stone takes precedence over pure discovery. However, the tension is expertly managed through carefully placed foreshadowing, Snape's ominous presence, the fleeting glimpses of danger, and the recurring motif of the Mirror of Erist, which offers Harry a poignant, yet painful, glimpse of his lost parents. This emotional undercurrent, the persistent theme of confronting loss while simultaneously finding a new family, is what elevates the film beyond mere fantasy adventure, anchoring the magic in recognizable human emotion. The final confrontation, while thematically simple, good versus residual evil, is effective because it places the fate of the world not in superior power, but in the self-sacrificing love Harry inherited, a powerful legacy established early on. The weight of cinematic history and audience expectation lent an almost sacred quality to the first viewing of this adaptation. Director Columbus, channeling his experience in crafting nostalgic adventure narratives, understood that the film needed to feel both new and immediately familiar. This required a deliberate choice regarding the tone. It needed to be enchanting without tipping into saccharine sweetness, and suspenseful without sacrificing the underlying core of childish optimism. The production's success hinged on managing the inherent contradictions of a world where giant chess pieces can be destroyed, and yet profound themes of mortality and sacrifice are introduced. The ensemble cast surrounding the central trio provided essential scaffolding for the young actors. Robbie Coltrane's Hagrid, in particular, serves as the initial gateway figure, a giant whose gruff exterior barely conceals an almost childlike sincerity and profound loyalty. His introduction, tearing the door from the shack, is a moment of pure cinematic disruption, symbolizing the violent but necessary rupture between Harry's mundane existence and his true heritage. Coltrane delivers the necessary exposition with a warmth that immediately assures the audience that despite the dangers lurking, Harry has found a protector. Maggie Smith's Professor McGonagall is another masterstroke of casting. Her stern, almost intimidating demeanor in the early scenes, particularly during the sorting ceremony, encapsulates the formality and sometimes severe structure of the magical world. Yet, beneath the sharp angles of her characterization lies an unwavering commitment to justice and a deep, almost maternal concern for Harry. Her precise, controlled performance contrasts beautifully with the chaotic energy of the younger students, illustrating the necessary balance of order and magic within Hogwarts. The element of discovery is heightened by the meticulous realization of the spells and magical artifacts. When the students learn their first charms, the visual effect must convey effort and consequence. The film wisely avoids over-reliance on flashy, instantaneous magic, instead focusing on the mechanics, the flick of the wrist, the clear enunciation of the word. This technical focus underscores the idea that magic, even in this enchanted world, requires discipline and learning, mirroring the diligence required of the actors themselves as they inhabited these iconic roles. Furthermore, the architectural design of Hogwarts functions as an extension of the characters' internal states. The spiraling staircases represent intellectual curiosity and the potential for getting lost. The dungeons house secrets and potential threat, and the common rooms are havens of belonging. This spatial storytelling is deeply resonant, allowing the audience to map their own emotional journeys onto the physical landscape of the school. The film's refusal to rush through these environmental introductions allows the world to breathe, making the audience feel as if they too are finding their place among the enchanted portraits and moving staircases. It is this foundation of meticulous, grounded world-building, supported by an iconic musical structure from Williams, that allowed this initial installment to become the template for the ensuing decade of fantasy filmmaking. The establishment of the primary antagonist's influence, even in a relatively benign introductory film, required a careful calibration of menace. Lord Voldemort, though physically absent for most of the runtime, looms large through implication and the palpable fear he inspires in others. The film cleverly distributes his threat across several characters, preventing the audience from focusing on a single, monolithic villain too early. Professor Quirrell functions as the perfect initial vessel, his stuttering anxiety and obvious discomfort betraying a deeper, parasitic evil. This choice maintains the illusion that the danger might be internal to the staff, adding a layer of institutional suspicion that enriches the school setting. The connection between Harry and the Dark Lord, symbolized by the scar, is more than just a narrative plot device. It serves as the earliest manifestation of Harry's inherent difference and the burden he carries. The scenes where Harry experiences flashes of Voldemort's mind, particularly the vision of the Mirror of Erised from the villain's perspective, are crucial for establishing the psychic link that will dominate future conflicts. These moments inject necessary discomfort into the otherwise cozy framework of the school year, reminding the audience that Harry's arrival is not just a happy homecoming, but an inevitable clash of destinies. The narrative arc around the stone itself pivots on the theme of desire versus need. The Mirror of Erised sequence is arguably the emotional centerpiece of the latter half of the film. Dumbledore's measured explanation of the mirror, that it shows only what is desperately wanted, not what is needed, acts as a philosophical linchpin for the entire series. It's a moment of profound guidance offered by Harris's Dumbledore, whose gentle authority steers Harry away from self-obsession toward the understanding that true fulfillment comes from relationships and courage, not solely from recovering the past. This scene sets a high moral standard for the protagonist before he even faces his first real physical adversary. Furthermore, the film's structure dedicates significant time to establishing the established wizarding hierarchy and its rules. The Quidditch matches, while spectacular showcases for the burgeoning special effects capabilities, also serve to reinforce team dynamics and the competitive spirit within the schoolhouses. Gryffindor's initial struggles and subsequent victory are intrinsically linked to Harry's natural talent being channeled through teamwork, a direct counterpoint to the solitary evil embodied by Voldemort. The vibrant, kinetic energy of the broomstick sequences provides necessary kinetic release following the more cerebral puzzle-solving sections leading up to the stone chamber. These moments of sport allow the audience to breathe and celebrate the magic without the immediate threat of death hanging over them, ensuring the film remains accessible to its youngest viewers while laying the groundwork for grimmer events to come. The narrative skillfully introduces the concept of legacy and inherent worth, themes that resonate deeply with the audience's own understanding of self-discovery. Harry's heritage is not just about being the boy who lived, but about the sacrifices made by his parents, Lily and James Potter. This inherited courage, which manifests physically when Harry is able to touch Quirrell without harm, is the ultimate thematic weapon of the film. It subtly elevates the narrative above a simple tale of good versus evil. It becomes a testament to the enduring power of unconditional love, a concept instilled in Harry before he had any memory of it. The progression of the trio through the challenges guarding the stone, the three-headed dog Fluffy, the Devil's Snare, the flying keys, the giant chess game, and the potions riddle is structured less as a test of individual genius and more as a demonstration of complementary strengths. Hermione's logical application of herbology saves them from the snares. Ron's strategic sacrifice in chess mirrors the necessary cost of victory, and Harry's purity of heart allows him to retrieve the stone. This sequence solidifies the foundational understanding that their success is contingent upon their interdependence, a powerful message for young viewers navigating their own social spheres. Each character sacrifices a strength, Hermione her knowledge, Ron his physical safety, Harry his own desire, for the common goal. The cinematic language employed during the challenges also marks a slight departure from the purely wonderstruck tone of the opening. The tension becomes palpably high, particularly during the chess match, which employs large-scale practical mechanics reminiscent of classic adventure films. This segment allows for genuine suspense, as Ron's immediate physical commitment in the game directly risks his well-being, showcasing the stakes involved in protecting the object of desire. The decision to have Harry ultimately face Quirrell alone, rather than Dumbledore intervening immediately, is vital for Radcliffe's arc in this first installment. It necessitates Harry stepping into his role as a protagonist capable of independent moral action. The psychological distress evident on Radcliffe's face as he confronts the spectral presence of Voldemort attached to Quirrell underscores the immense psychological weight placed upon this child hero. It is not a triumph of brute magical power, but a victory born from visceral empathy and the protective force of his mother's magic, a concept that sets the emotional stakes for the entire saga. Love is the ultimate defense against the darkest magic. The quiet aftermath, marked by Harry waking in the hospital wing under Dumbledore's watchful, reassuring gaze, signals a return to safety, but a safety that is now earned through bravery, fundamentally changing Harry's relationship with the world around him. The denouement of the film hinges on the emotional resonance of the closing ceremonies, serving as both a satisfying conclusion to the immediate threat and a powerful promise of future adventures. The Great Hall transformation for the end-of-year feast, following the dramatic revelation and confrontation, offers the audience a visual catharsis. The sudden appearance of points awarded by Dumbledore, a clear act of bending the established rules to reward bravery over mere academic compliance, solidifies his role not just as a wise administrator, but as a guardian willing to champion unconventional heroism. This moment directly validates the risks taken by the trio, reinforcing the film's central ethos: character trumps conformity. The departure from Hogwarts is tinged with an understandable melancholy. The students are leaving behind the first true home many of them have known, even if only for a few months. The visual juxtaposition between the magical sanctuary of the castle and the looming gray reality of King's Cross Station prepares the audience for the temporary separation that the summer break imposes. For Harry, returning to the Dursleys is framed as a significant regression, an immediate dampening of the vibrant life he has just discovered. This final sequence ensures that the desire for Harry's return to the wizarding world is not simply plot-driven, but emotionally ingrained in the viewer. The narrative successfully establishes the Dursleys' house as the necessary narrative prison that must be escaped each year. The film's closing moments are saturated with John Williams' masterful score, particularly the soaring rendition of Hedwig's theme, accompanying the flight across London. This music acts as a final, grand affirmation of the world's inherent magic, assuring the audience that the wonder is not temporary or illusionary, but a permanent fixture of Harry's reality. The initial success of this film can be attributed to this flawless emotional framing. It managed to feel both epic in scope, thanks to the production values and Williams' score, and deeply personal, due to the grounded, relatable friendships forged by the young leads. Moreover, the performances of the lead actors, captured at such an impressionable age, provided a crucial element of authenticity that prevented the spectacle from overwhelming the heart of the story. Radcliffe's wide-eyed sincerity, Watson's intellectual tenacity, and Grint's pragmatic humor were captured at a point before the pressures of intense fame might have altered their natural chemistry. This untainted initial presentation of the trio is what cemented the foundational appeal, making the audience invest not just in the magical plot, but in the enduring human connections between the three children navigating extraordinary circumstances together. The film doesn't just introduce magic, it introduces the architecture of a profound, lifelong companionship built under the shadow of fate. The cultural impact generated by Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone extended far beyond cinematic metrics, immediately reshaping the landscape of young adult literature adaptations and family entertainment for the ensuing decade. The film arrived at a pivotal moment when digital filmmaking capabilities were mature enough to render fantastical worlds with unprecedented detail, yet the creative mandate remained firmly rooted in honoring the established mythology. This balance between technological ambition and narrative reverence is precisely what secured its longevity. Unlike many fantasy efforts that rely heavily on rapid-fire exposition to establish lore, Columbus's approach was patient, allowing the audience to absorb the textures of the wizarding world organically alongside Harry. Every detail, from the aged leather of the library books to the cluttered warmth of the burrow, glimpsed in memory and photographs, served to build a cohesive, believable secondary reality. The casting directors deserve significant credit for recognizing the raw potential in their novice leads. Radcliffe, Grint, and Watson were not simply placeholders. Their very youthfulness became a narrative asset. They aged visibly and emotionally with the franchise, meaning the audience grew up alongside them, fostering an unusually deep level of attachment. For instance, watching Watson's Hermione gradually shed her self-righteousness to become the fiercely protective core of the group is a slow-burn character development that few sequels manage to achieve so gracefully. Her initial awkwardness in social settings, contrasted with her supreme confidence in academics, provided necessary friction that drove early conflict resolution. John Williams's contribution cannot be overstated. His score functions as the emotional memory bank for the entire franchise. Hedwig's theme, with its serpentine, slightly ominous melody interwoven with high, hopeful strings, immediately signals the presence of something ancient and powerful. This score transcends mere background music, becoming a sonic shorthand for entering a realm where the ordinary laws of physics are suspended. The recurring musical motifs for Hogwarts itself, vast, resonant, and slightly melancholic, ensure that even scenes of high action are underscored by a sense of profound history and underlying mystery, suggesting deeper secrets yet to be uncovered beneath the polished surface of the school year. Ultimately, the film succeeds because it understands the fundamental human desires Rowling tapped into: the longing to be special, the comfort of true friendship, and the thrill of discovering that the world is far stranger and more wonderful than previously assumed. It is a story about finding one's true identity by leaving behind a suffocating past. The initial confrontation with the Mirror of Erised, where Harry sees his parents, captures the essence of this longing. It is about belonging, not about power. By centering the narrative on these accessible, universal emotions, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone laid an exceptionally sturdy, heartfelt foundation, proving that even the most spectacular fantasy requires a deeply human core to resonate across generations. The meticulous crafting of the supporting adult roles provided the necessary gravitas to ground the fantastical elements. Michael Gambon, though taking over the role in later films, the initial casting of Richard Harris as Dumbledore was a defining choice. Harris projected an almost Olympian calm, his voice possessing a gentle authority that suggested vast, untapped magical reserves held in reserve. His Dumbledore was less whimsical trickster and more benevolent sage, a necessary anchor of wisdom against the rising tide of darkness, personified by the increasingly unhinged Professor Quirrell. The contrast between Harris's measured presence and Ian Hart's trembling, nervous portrayal of Quirrell created palpable dramatic tension. The audience could sense the struggle within the man, making his eventual monstrous reveal all the more jarring, yet predictably tragic. The visual texture of the film also heavily relied on the costumes and makeup departments to sell the difference between the Muggle and Wizarding worlds. The suffocating, shapeless attire of the Dursleys starkly contrasted with the rich, colorful, and occasionally eccentric robes donned by the witches and wizards. This visual language reinforced the thematic separation: confinement versus freedom, the drab versus the dazzling. Even the design of Ollivander's wand shop, dusty, cramped, and overwhelmingly filled with boxes reaching toward the unseen ceiling, communicated the sense of arcane history and potential that lay dormant within Harry until the right instrument chose him. This emphasis on tactile detail made the magic feel inherently rooted in craftsmanship rather than mere digital conjuration. The school structure itself, particularly the house system, acts as an early crucible for character development. The sorting ceremony is perhaps the most anxiety-inducing scene for a new viewer, as the Hat verbally debates Harry's potential placement, acknowledging the Slytherin ambition before conceding to Gryffindor's defined bravery. This internal debate within Harry, the fear of being sorted into the house associated with evil, highlights his deep-seated desire for moral alignment and acceptance into the forces of good. The inherent rivalry and camaraderie established between Gryffindor, particularly through the immediate bonding of the trio, sets up the essential social dynamics that will fuel much of the franchise's interpersonal conflict and loyalty tests. Finally, the film's triumph lies in its controlled escalation of scale. It begins with the quiet misery of Harry's cupboard, moves to the bustling wonder of Diagon Alley, settles into the educational structure of the castle, and finally explodes into the life-or-death confrontation in the underground chambers. Columbus skillfully manages this growth curve, ensuring that each new environment expands the scope of the story without making the central characters feel small or insignificant. Harry's ability to triumph over obstacles, some designed by the greatest wizards alive, establishes his unique worth not through prophecy alone, but through the demonstration of courage learned through newfound friendship and protection. This carefully managed introduction was vital. It provided the necessary emotional groundwork for the far darker, more complex narratives that would follow, ensuring the audience was deeply invested in the characters before the stakes became truly existential. The thematic exploration of Chosen One mythology is handled with surprising subtlety for a blockbuster of this scale. Harry's status is less about inherent superiority and more about an inherited shield, the enduring protection of sacrificial love. This concept elevates the film's climax beyond a mere magical duel. When Harry confronts Quirrell Farrell Voldemort, his power does not stem from superior spellcasting, which he largely lacks at this stage, but from an involuntary, almost unconscious activation of his mother's protective magic. Radcliffe portrays this moment not with aggressive confidence, but with a sort of desperate, wide-eyed necessity, conveying the sheer terror of touching something inherently evil and surviving by instinct. This reliance on inherited emotion over learned skill sets a critical precedent for the entire series. The deepest magic is personal and relational. The introduction of the Death Eater's unseen influence through the chilling presence of Voldemort provides a necessary psychological undercurrent to the school setting. The specter of the Dark Lord, even when merely manifesting through Quirrell's turban, casts a shadow over the perceived safety of Hogwarts. This contrasts sharply with the genuine, sometimes clumsy, enthusiasm of the first-year students. The scenes in the common rooms, filled with the simple joys of discovering chocolate frogs or practicing basic levitation charms, are deliberately warm and inviting. They function as essential narrative safe harbors, making the threat of the outside world and the darkness creeping inside the castle walls feel all the more invasive and real. The film's approach to Quidditch, while dazzling, is fundamentally about team dynamics under pressure. The sport serves as a microcosm for the house rivalries and Harry's burgeoning fame. Rupert Grint's Ron, stationed on the sidelines, acts as the grounded observer, voicing the audience's awe and occasional frustration at Harry's near-death experiences during the match. The chaos of the broomsticks and the physical vulnerability of the players, especially when Harry is cursed, underscores that even in a world of magic, physical danger and coordination matter. This sequence is expertly woven to showcase that Harry, despite his fame, is still learning the basics of maneuvering within this new reality. Furthermore, the film subtly establishes the concept of memory and loss as foundational elements of heroism. Dumbledore's parting words to Harry about the Mirror of Erised are not merely exposition, they are a philosophical treatise on moving forward while honoring the past. This quiet wisdom, delivered by the venerable Harris, frames Harry's future quests not as a search for vengeance, but as a journey towards self-acceptance within a world that tragically took his parents from him. The film manages the difficult task of wrapping up a major adventure, the securing of the stone, while leaving the primary emotional conflict, Harry's orphaned status, entirely unresolved, perfectly positioning the audience for the next stage of his growth. The careful establishment of the magical ecosystem required introducing not only its wonders, but also its regulatory framework and the darker undercurrents of its political history. The Ministry of Magic, though largely unseen in this initial outing, is alluded to through the seriousness with which adults treat infractions, providing a necessary layer of institutional complexity beneath the immediate dangers of the school grounds. This implicit governmental structure ensures that the world feels fully formed, complete with bureaucracy and oversight, even if those structures occasionally fail to prevent tragedy. The characterization of Severus Snape, portrayed with icy precision by Alan Rickman, served as the film's primary red herring and a masterclass in ambiguous antagonism. Rickman's delivery, every syllable laced with sardonic contempt, immediately positioned Snape as an external threat, leveraging the audience's suspicion based on the established trope of the darkly inclined potions master. His apparent malice toward Harry provided necessary friction throughout the year, directing suspicion away from the true villain and simultaneously deepening the mystery surrounding his own motivations. The dramatic irony, once the truth about Quirrell is revealed, retroactively reframes Snape's actions as protective vigilance, a subtle narrative maneuver that rewards attentive viewing and adds necessary depth to a character whose ambiguity is central to the ongoing saga. The visual pacing concerning the enchanted elements also warrants examination. The initial journey through the leaky cauldron and Diagon Alley is characterized by bright, slightly chaotic energy, a sudden flood of sensory input designed to overwhelm the viewer alongside Harry. However, once inside Hogwarts, the camera work becomes more deliberate, often using long tracking shots through the vast corridors and up the staircases. This technique emphasizes the sheer scale of the castle, often dwarfing the young protagonists and visually underlining their status as newcomers in an ancient, powerful institution. This deliberate pacing slows down during moments of pure discovery, such as Harry's first time seeing the Quidditch pitch, allowing the awe to settle before plunging into the next plot point. The film handles the theme of prejudice obliquely through the concept of blood purity, primarily introduced via Draco Malfoy. Tom Felton plays Malfoy with a sneering entitlement, embodying the arrogance born from unchallenged lineage. His interactions with Hermione, whose Muggle-born status is often the target of his insults, introduce the underlying social stratification of the wizarding world. While the focus remains on Harry's immediate adventures, these small, sharp exchanges ensure that the audience is aware that the world they are entering is not a perfect utopia, but one burdened by historical biases that Voldemort sought to exploit. This sets the stage for future conflicts where ideology, not just raw power, will be contested. The enduring effectiveness of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone lies significantly in its masterful manipulation of tone through cinematography and lighting design. Stuart Freeborn's production design, while expansive, often employed pockets of intense shadow and dramatic chiaroscuro, particularly in the later sequences within the castle's depths. This visual strategy served to heighten the sense of isolation and danger surrounding Harry during his investigation, contrasting sharply with the warm, golden hues associated with Gryffindor Tower and Dumbledore's office. The lighting choices essentially narrate the emotional stakes. The brighter the area, the safer the companionship, the deeper the shadows, the closer the proximity to Voldemort's influence. The performance of the youngest lead, Daniel Radcliffe, required an extraordinary range of subtle expression given his limited prior experience. His portrayal of Harry is defined by a profound sense of bewildered responsibility. In moments like when he first gazes into the mirror of Erised, Radcliffe conveys a silent, aching yearning that speaks volumes more than dialogue could, capturing the essence of a boy desperate for the parental connection he never knew. This vulnerability makes his eventual acts of bravery feel genuinely costly rather than inherent. He is constantly reacting to the extraordinary circumstances which allows the audience to maintain their footing as co-discoverers of this magical reality. Conversely, the casting of the older antagonists, even those with brief screen time, anchors the film's maturity. John Hurt as Mr. Ollivander delivers a performance steeped in ancient weariness. His almost theatrical, breathy delivery, when explaining the esoteric connection between wand and wizard, conveys the weight of centuries of magical tradition. This sense of ancient history is vital. It suggests that the events unfolding are not isolated incidents but part of a long-running, cyclical conflict. Ollivander is the keeper of the necessary tools, and his slight nervousness when handling Harry's wand hints at the powerful unseen connections at play. The famous giant chess scene, choreographed by a team clearly influenced by classic adventure set pieces, functions as the ultimate test of teamwork rooted in learned knowledge. Ron Weasley's commitment here is deeply emotional. Rupert Grint allows Ron's fear to be evident, yet his loyalty overrides self-preservation as he commands the pieces. His subsequent, almost comical physical collapse after delivering the final checkmate emphasizes the physical and mental toll of operating in a world where play involves genuine, potentially fatal risk. This sequence beautifully validates Ron's strategic intelligence, an aspect often overshadowed by Hermione's intellectual prowess and Harry's inherent destiny. It is a moment where the sidekick becomes the pivotal hero through strategic sacrifice. In summation, the film's construction is an exercise in balanced tension. It uses the comforting visual vocabulary of childhood, large feasts, school spirit, secret passageways, as a protective shell around a narrative dealing with existential threats, deep personal loss, and the weight of destiny. The fidelity to the book's inherent warmth, amplified by the iconic musical score and the earnestness of the young cast, ensured that the film was not merely a fantasy spectacle, but an emotionally resonant invitation into a world viewers immediately felt they belonged to, securing its place as the perfect gateway installment. The enduring resonance of the film is inextricably linked to its successful establishment of the fundamental opposition between the structured, yet deeply flawed systems of the adult wizarding world and the instinctive, pure morality of the newly formed Golden Trio. Dumbledore's Hogwarts, for all its wonder, operates on established rules: the prohibition of magic outside class, the rigid point system, the structure of the House Cup. This order is precisely what the trio, driven by curiosity, loyalty, and a distrust of adult obfuscation, must constantly circumvent. Their actions, though heroic, are fundamentally rebellious, mirroring a natural adolescent drive against authority figures who seem to be withholding critical truths. This theme of necessary rebellion is embodied by the film's most striking visual motif: the journey into the forbidden corridors. The discovery of Fluffy, the ferocious three-headed dog guarding the trapdoor, serves as the first true threshold moment that separates youthful mischief from life-threatening endeavor. The staging of this scene is crucial. The trio is operating outside the purview of McGonagall's stern watchfulness, relying solely on their combined wit. The sheer, visceral terror inspired by Fluffy, a creature that is both absurdly cartoonish and genuinely lethal, demands an emotional commitment from the actors that solidifies their alliance. Watson's initial recoil mixed with rapid analysis, Grint's paralyzed fear mixed with defensive positioning, and Radcliffe's determined charge demonstrate their distinct roles in crisis management. Furthermore, the film subtly embeds the idea that true magical power often manifests not in loud spells, but in quiet, deeply personal acts of will. The puzzle set by Professor Flitwick, involving the keys, demands precision and agility that relies more on physical coordination and acute observational skills than inherited magical talent. This sequence ensures that Hermione and Ron are active problem solvers alongside Harry, preventing the narrative from defaulting to Harry as the sole savior figure. When Ron sacrifices himself in the chess game, he articulates this theme perfectly. Sometimes, the bravest act is accepting defeat or injury for the sake of a greater mission, a realization that imbues his often insecure character with profound dignity. The narrative's subtle exploration of secrecy continues to pay dividends. The pervasive sense that certain powerful figures, especially Snape, know far more than they let on, forces the audience into a state of perpetual low-grade paranoia that complements the children's own investigative urges. Even Dumbledore's wisdom seems cloaked in a necessary vagueness. This atmosphere of withheld information trains the audience to look beneath the surface, to question the easily presented villain, Snape, and to trust the unlikely bonds, the trio. This early narrative sophistication ensures that the film, despite its accessibility to children, offers satisfying layers for adult viewers who appreciate complex character motivations and carefully managed suspense, setting a sophisticated bar for the subsequent darker installments. The very first moments Harry spends among his peers at Hogwarts are saturated with a desperate longing for belonging, a sentiment that permeates the atmosphere of the Gryffindor common room. This space, characterized by its cozy, slightly chaotic domesticity, the crackling fire, the mismatched, overstuffed furniture, the circular entryway, becomes the visual manifestation of Harry's newly discovered emotional safety net. It is here that the chemistry between the central trio truly coalesces, moving beyond shared necessity into genuine affection. We witness their shared, almost conspiratorial delight in the sheer novelty of their surroundings. The ghostly intrusions, the self-adjusting furniture, the very air thrumming with untold history. These scenes are bathed in amber and soft firelight, deliberately constructed as the visual antithesis to the cold, sterile dread of Privet Drive. The introduction of the house elves, particularly Dobby's predecessor, though not yet named, the concept of indentured, overworked magical servitude, provides an immediate, unspoken social commentary within the magical world. The glimpses of exhausted, overly eager staff attending to the needs of the students subtly hint at the ethical blind spots within this seemingly benevolent society. This peripheral detail, often missed on the first viewing, speaks volumes about the complacency of the established magical order, suggesting that not all inhabitants of this enchanted world are treated with the same grace afforded to students like Harry or the renowned professors. The visual lexicon employed during the flight to Hogwarts on the Hogwarts Express is instrumental in transitioning the tone from whimsical adventure to epic fantasy. The sequence where the Dementor-like specters of the real world are replaced by the ethereal, soaring beauty of the actual train journey over rugged Scottish landscapes is a powerful emotional reset. Robbie Coltrane's Hagrid, positioned as the comforting gatekeeper, transitions from the grumpy guardian of the shack to the boisterous enthusiast showing off the delights of the world he inhabits. His sheer, unadulterated joy in sharing this world with Harry is infectious, functioning as a proxy for the audience's own swelling wonder. The sight of the castle emerging dramatically from the mists, almost mythologically perfect against the darkening sky, is the culmination of all the preceding setup. It is the promise fulfilled, rendered with a grandeur that solidifies the film's status as a monumental cinematic event. The climax of the film, though centered on the stone, resolves on a deeply personal note of earned self-worth for Harry. The final conversation with Dumbledore in the hospital wing is not about magical strategy, but about character integrity. Dumbledore's quiet acknowledgement of Lily's love acting as an unbreakable defense is the key takeaway, delivered with a profound solemnity that suggests this truth is more powerful than any artifact or curse. It transforms Harry's survival from a lucky accident of destiny into a victory of inherited moral fortitude. This is the final comforting reassurance to the audience. In this world of chaos and darkness, the deepest, most reliable magic resides in human connection and selfless love, a concept beautifully reinforced by the image of the trio graduating from their separate trials into a single, inseparable unit as they depart for the summer. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Territory of Cinema channel. Please consider subscribing and hitting that like button if you enjoy our content. Today, we are going to discuss the film Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone from 2001. The story begins by introducing us to the profoundly mundane existence of young Harry Potter, living under the oppressive roof of his aunt and uncle, the Dursleys. His life is a study in neglect, punctuated by the sheer oddity of things that happen around him. Lights flickering, things inexplicably mending themselves, foreshadowing the magical world that waits just beyond his grasp. This early drabness serves as a perfect contrast to the spectacle that is soon to unfold, much like the early, almost biographical struggles of a great artist before their breakthrough. The arrival of the letters, relentlessly delivered by an ever-increasing horde of owls, signals the irrevocable break from his dreary reality. Hagrid, a towering figure of genuine warmth and barely contained enthusiasm, a character embodying the unrestrained spirit of early cinematic fantasy, bursts onto the scene to deliver the news: Harry is a wizard. This revelation sets the stage for his journey, pulling him from the suffocating normalcy of Privet Drive towards Diagon Alley, a place bursting with the kind of vibrant sensory detail that filmmakers love to establish early on to immerse the audience. We see him acquire his first wand, an act imbued with the significance of a defining creative choice. His arrival at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is a moment of cinematic grandeur. The castle itself seems to breathe history and possibility. Here he meets Ron Weasley, whose easygoing loyalty contrasts nicely with Harry's reserved nature, and Hermione Granger, whose fierce intellect and dedication immediately position her as the grounding force of the trio. A dynamic reminiscent of many successful screenwriting partnerships where different talents balance each other out. The sorting ceremony, placing them into Gryffindor House, solidifies their bond. Their early education is a whirlwind of wonder, learning to fly on broomsticks, a clear nod to the thrill of kinetic action sequences beloved in adventure films, and grappling with the intricacies of magic. During this time, we are also introduced to the subtle, unsettling presence of Professor Snape, whose palpable disdain for Harry hints at deeper, unresolved conflicts, a classic dramatic device used to build tension. The central mystery begins to unfold around the Sorcerer's Stone, an object of immense power hidden within the school. Harry, driven by a protective instinct and perhaps a lingering sense of obligation to the legacy his parents left behind, partners with Ron and Hermione to investigate. Their collective efforts showcase their developing strengths: Ron's strategic thinking under pressure, Hermione's encyclopedic knowledge, the essential research phase in any good plot, and Harry's inherent bravery. Their descent into the labyrinth protecting the stone is a masterclass in escalating peril, testing each of their individual skills. They navigate a series of elaborate traps, each demanding a unique solution, from overcoming a monstrous three-headed dog to surviving a deadly game of wizard chess, a sequence that beautifully visualizes tactical decision-making in a highly kinetic form. The climax sees Harry facing the final guardian alone. This confrontation reveals the true antagonist, Professor Quirrell, who has been operating under the sinister influence of Lord Voldemort. The scene where Voldemort manifests upon the back of Quirrell's head is a stark, almost shocking visual representation of duality and hidden evil, a high point of tension. Harry's victory, achieved not through superior skill, but through the enduring power of selfless love inherited from his mother, a theme often explored in films about inherited burdens, is both deeply personal and universally resonant. The ending sees Harry recovering in the infirmary. The truth about his parents' sacrifice and the protective charm cast upon him is revealed, finally granting him a sense of belonging and peace. As the school year concludes and the students depart, Harry leaves Hogwarts not as the neglected orphan, but as someone who has found his place, possessing friendships and a future brimming with the adventures that await him beyond the summer break. The initial scenes of Harry's existence at number 4, Privet Drive, are painted in the dullest palette imaginable, emphasizing the suffocating mediocrity imposed by the Dursleys, who represent the very antithesis of the imaginative spirit required for true artistry. Harry, growing up amidst cupboard spaces and constant belittling, carries the weight of an unspoken significance, a silent promise of the extraordinary that his drab surroundings cannot extinguish. This quiet suffering resonates with the early, often thankless years many iconic figures endure before their talents are recognized. When Hagrid arrives, he is less a man and more a force of nature, embodying the sheer, unbridled joy of discovery. His entrance shatters the fragile normalcy the Dursleys have constructed, much like a revolutionary piece of art jolting a complacent society. The journey to Diagon Alley is Harry's first true immersion, a visual feast designed to overload the senses, showing the audience, and Harry simultaneously, the intoxicating potential of this hidden world. Purchasing his wand is depicted with near-religious significance. It's the moment the tool of the trade is selected, mirroring a composer choosing their first piano or a painter finding their signature brush. Hogwarts itself feels ancient and wise, a character in its own right, constructed to inspire awe. The formation of the central trio is immediate and essential. Ron, with his boundless, slightly clumsy affection, provides the necessary emotional anchor, the sidekick whose unwavering belief is often just as crucial as the protagonist's bravery. Hermione, by contrast, is the walking encyclopedia, the diligent student whose academic prowess stems from a deep-seated need for order and mastery, a trait seen in many highly disciplined performers who thrive on rigorous practice. Their quick camaraderie against the backdrop of the grand echoing halls forms the emotional core that will sustain them through subsequent dangers. The early lessons, particularly flying, introduce an element of reckless abandon and physical grace, celebrating the sheer fun of unconstrained motion, a necessary counterpoint to the more cerebral aspects of magic. Meanwhile, the simmering resentment radiating from Professor Snape adds a layer of immediate personal threat. Snape, whose stern, almost theatrical disdain is perfectly pitched, acts as the immediate gatekeeper and external manifestation of the scrutiny and judgment Harry is forced to endure, hinting at a much larger, systemic resistance Harry must overcome. The quest for the Sorcerer's Stone transforms their academic year into a genuine adventure. The decision to investigate is not purely heroic. It's driven by a potent mix of curiosity and a fierce loyalty to Dumbledore, the wise, often enigmatic mentor figure whose absence during the crucial moments forces the young heroes to step up. Their passage through the hidden chambers is brilliantly choreographed, allowing each member to shine in their specialized area. Hermione's prowess solves the logical riddles, demonstrating that intellectual rigor is as vital as brute force. Ron's sacrifice during the giant chessboard sequence is perhaps his finest moment, a display of strategic selflessness that proves his worth beyond mere comedic relief. The final confrontation is raw and intensely personal. Seeing Quirrell, the mild-mannered teacher, twisted into a vessel for Voldemort's terrifying return is a masterful stroke of horror that defines the film's darker undertones. Voldemort's presence, though spectral, carries immense menace, representing the entrenched ancient evil that threatens to extinguish the light of the new generation. Harry's final act is pure instinct, the power of his mother's protective love manifesting physically. It's not a spell he casts, but a deep inherent force, suggesting that true power comes from connection, a recurring motif in stories about enduring legacies. The subsequent recovery offers a necessary moment of emotional catharsis. The revelations about Lily Potter's ultimate sacrifice solidify Harry's identity, transforming him from a survivor into an inheritor of a legacy built on profound love. His departure at the end of the term is quiet, but significant. The boy who arrived, despised and invisible, leaves imbued with purpose, recognized by his peers and, most importantly, by himself, ready to embrace the complex, sprawling narrative of his life, awaiting him beyond the closing credits. The initial tableau of Harry's life with the Dursleys is a deliberate exercise in establishing baseline misery, a necessary foundation for the explosion of wonder to follow. His confinement in the cupboard under the stairs is a physical manifestation of his stunted identity, a constant reminder that he does not belong in this world of forced normalcy. The tiny, almost miraculous occurrences around him, the way his broken glasses inexplicably mend themselves after a particularly harsh